The strongest people you know are not strong because life was easy on them. They're strong because life hit them, repeatedly, and they had no other option but to keep moving. But here's what nobody talks about. All that pain didn't just leave scars. It changed how they think, how they trust, how they love, and how they see the world. And most of them have no idea it's happening. Today, we're going over 9 traits that show up in people who have been through a lot. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why some of the people closest to you act the way they do, including, maybe, yourself. Pain does something to a person. It literally rewires the brain. Psychologists have studied this for decades, and what they found is that when someone goes through prolonged suffering, whether that's childhood trauma, loss, emotional abuse, or just years of things going wrong, the brain adapts. It changes its settings. It starts making decisions differently, and those changes don't disappear when the hard times are over. They stick around. They keep running in the background, like an app you forgot to close, eating up energy, influencing everything. And here's the problem that makes all of this so complicated. Most people who carry this kind of pain don't look like they're carrying it. They function, they show up, they help everyone around them, they make people laugh, they have it together, or at least they look like they do. And because they appear fine, nobody checks on them, nobody digs deeper. So these traits just keep going unnoticed, unaddressed, shaping every relationship and every decision without anyone, including the person themselves, really understanding what's driving it. So, let's get into it. These 9 traits, one by one. And as we go, pay attention, because some of these might describe someone in your life more accurately than you think. The first one is that people who have suffered a lot expect bad things to happen, even when everything is going well. You've probably seen this. You give someone good news, and instead of being happy, their brain immediately jumps to everything that could go wrong. They get a promotion, and their first thought is, what if I fail at it? They fall in love, and instead of enjoying it, they're already bracing for heartbreak. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called negative future projection, and it comes directly from repeated painful experiences. When your brain has been caught off guard by pain enough times, it stops waiting to be surprised. It starts expecting pain as the default. It figures that if it stays ready for the worst, it won't be blindsided again. The problem is that this defense mechanism makes it incredibly hard to actually enjoy good moments. Those moments arrive, and instead of landing, they just pass by, because the person is too busy scanning the horizon for the next bad thing. Now that connects directly into the second trait, and this one is tricky, because it actually looks like a strength from the outside. People who've been through a lot tend to become hyper-independent. They do everything themselves. They don't ask for help. They figure things out alone, carry problems alone, and honestly, they get really good at it. But here's what's actually going on underneath that independence. At some point, depending on someone led to real disappointment. Maybe they needed someone and that person wasn't there. Maybe asking for help was used against them. Maybe love felt conditional. So over time, they learned, consciously or not, that needing people is a risk, and they stopped taking it. So now they're incredibly capable, incredibly self-sufficient, and incredibly lonely, because genuine connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is exactly the thing they've spent years learning to avoid. And speaking of vulnerability, this leads us to the third trait, which is one most people never connect to suffering. They overthink everything. A text message that goes unanswered for 2 hours turns into a mental spiral. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Did I come on too strong? A friend's tone of voice shifts slightly, and they're replaying the last 3 conversations, trying to find the moment things went off track. A pause in a conversation feels loaded. This is called hypervigilance, and it's a survival mechanism. If you grew up, or spent years, in an environment where things could shift suddenly, where moods were unpredictable, where safety felt temporary, your brain learned to stay alert at all times. It trained itself to catch early signs of danger before danger arrived, and the brain is really good at learning. The problem is, it doesn't automatically unlearn things just because the environment changes. So now, even in completely safe situations, that scanner is still running. It's looking for threats that aren't there, and it is exhausting. Not just for the person, but for everyone around them who can't understand why they seem so on edge all the time. All right, quick check-in. Do you recognize any of these in yourself or in someone you know? Drop a comment below. Seriously, you might be surprised how many people watching this right now are nodding along and feeling like someone finally put words to something they couldn't explain. Let's keep going. The fourth trait is one that can push people away without them ever meaning to, and that's that people who have suffered a lot have an incredibly hard time trusting, not just romantically, in every area. Friends, family, co-workers, even strangers. Trust for them is not given freely. It has to be earned, slowly, through consistent actions, over a long period of time. And even after someone has earned it, there's always a small, quiet part of them waiting for something to go wrong, waiting to be let down. This is not them being difficult or paranoid or cold. This is their nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do, because at some point, they trusted someone completely, and that person broke it. And that kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt in the moment. It changes how the brain processes safety in relationships for a long time after. Now here's the fifth trait, and this one might actually surprise you. People who have been through a lot tend to carry deep, persistent guilt, and not just about things they've done. They feel guilty about things that have nothing to do with them. Someone cancels plans because they're sick, and the person with this trait spends the rest of the day wondering if they did something to make that person not want to see them. They apologize constantly, sometimes several times for the same small thing, sometimes for things that are clearly outside of their control. Therapists call this maladaptive guilt, and it usually traces back to early experiences where a person was made to feel like they were the problem, like their presence was too much, like things that happened around them were somehow caused by them. So they grew up with this deep-seated belief that they owe the world something, that they need to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating, just to be acceptable. Here's what makes this even more interesting, and this is something most people don't know. Research actually shows that people who carry this kind of guilt tend to be significantly more empathetic than average. They feel other people's pain deeply. They notice when someone is off, even when no one else does. But, and this is important, that same empathy makes them more likely to stay in toxic situations far longer than they should. Because they keep thinking, if I just try a little harder, if I just give a little more, things will get better. Keep that in mind. It connects directly to something we're going to talk about in a few minutes. The sixth trait is one that can actually be beautiful, but it comes with a cost. People who have suffered deeply feel emotions much more intensely than most people. A piece of music can bring them to tears out of nowhere. A sad story doesn't just make them a little emotional. It hits them in the chest and lingers for hours. But it also goes the other way. When something makes them angry, it's not just irritation, it's a wave. When they feel joy, it's real and it's deep. When they feel betrayal, it can feel like the ground gave out. Psychologists connect this to emotional dysregulation, which basically means the brain's emotional processing system got disrupted at some point, either because feelings were constantly overwhelming or because they were constantly suppressed. Both things break the dial. So now it goes from 0 to 100 without much in between, and that can feel like too much, both for the person experiencing it and for the people around them who don't understand where that intensity is coming from. And here's something to sit with before we move on. That emotional intensity, that depth of feeling, is directly connected to the seventh trait, because people who have been through a lot are usually the most fiercely loyal people you will ever meet. When they love you hard. They remember the things you mentioned once in passing. They show up, they check in, they'll rearrange their entire schedule to be there for you at a bad moment, because they know from personal experience what it feels like to reach out and have no one there, what it feels like to cry in a quiet room with nowhere to put it. So they make a decision, often unconsciously, to be for the people they care about what no one was for them. The problem is that level of loyalty isn't always matched. And because they tend to see the best in people, because they want to believe the good is there even when the signs are pointing elsewhere, they give that loyalty to people who don't deserve it. They stay too long. They forgive too many times. Not because they lack self-respect, but because they genuinely believe people can change, and because leaving feels like abandonment, and they know too well how abandonment feels. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed in a friendship, a relationship, a situation, way past the point you should have, because you kept feeling responsible for making it work? Because leaving felt like giving up on someone. That is not weakness. That might just be the mark of someone who has felt more than their fair share. Now the eighth trait, this one genuinely surprises people. A lot of people who have been through serious pain develop a very dark, very sharp, and very quick sense of humor. They laugh at things that make other people uncomfortable. They joke about their own struggles in a way that catches people off guard. They can sit with heavy, dark topics without flinching, and people either love this about them or don't quite know what to do with it. But here's why it happens. Humor is one of the most effective coping mechanisms the human brain has. When you've experienced something painful, turning it into a joke gives you a small sense of control over it. It takes something that could crush you and makes it survivable. Psychologists actually call this gallows humor, and it's considered a marker of psychological resilience. It means the brain found a way to process pain without collapsing under it, but it also works as armor, because if you're laughing, nobody thinks to ask if you're actually okay. And for someone who has been carrying things alone for a long time, that armor is very, very comfortable. Which brings us to the 9th trait, and I think this is the most important one in the whole video. People who have been through a lot are often incredibly strong on the surface, but completely starved for real, genuine connection underneath. They built this version of themselves that handles things, that functions, that looks like they're fine, and they wear it so naturally, for so long, that the world just believes it. Their friends believe it. Their family believes it. Sometimes even they believe it. But inside, what they want more than anything is for someone to actually see past that, to look at them and ask, not as a formality, not as small talk, but genuinely, are you actually okay? And to stay for the answer. Here's what ties all 9 of these traits together, and this is the part I really want you to hear. Every single one of them, the overthinking, the independence, the loyalty, the guilt, the dark humor, the emotional intensity, the mistrust, every one of them started as protection. The brain was trying to survive something hard, and for a long time, it worked. These traits kept them going. But protection that stays switched on forever eventually becomes a cage, because now they're in a different chapter of their life, but the old settings are still running. The brain hasn't gotten the memo that things have changed, and that's what makes healing so difficult for people who carry a lot of pain. It's not about fixing something broken, it's about gently teaching a very smart, very protective brain that it doesn't need to fight so hard anymore, that it's allowed to rest, that not every person is a threat, and not every good moment is just calm before a storm. This is why one person, just one, who truly sees them, can change everything. Not with advice, not with solutions, just with presence, just with staying, just with choosing to know them past the surface. If someone came to mind while you were watching this, reach out to them today. You don't need a reason, you don't need the right words. Just say you were thinking about them. That's it. Because for someone who has spent years feeling invisible, being remembered, out of nowhere, for no reason, is more powerful than you know. And if you recognize yourself in this video, I want you to hear this clearly. The fact that you made it through everything that shaped these traits, that is not a small thing. That is everything. The way you adapted, the way you kept going when you had real reasons not to, that's not something to be ashamed of. The work now is just learning to live in a way that matches where you actually are, not where you've been. And that starts with understanding yourself, which is exactly what you just did. If this made you understand yourself or someone else a little better, there's a lot more like this waiting for you here.